Hello makers, and welcome to Share Stitchery. I'm Catherine Harris, and today I've got two very special guests with us today. One is our brand new puppy Millie, and the other is my son Jonathan. So John, why don't you tell us why we're here?
I found a mistake.
A mistake?
Yeah, you're bad at cutting. Okay, we both know this. Okay. Okay, so it's because my Halloween costume, obviously. I mean, it's all about me, right?
It is, really.
Yeah, this whole video, totally. So basically,
Here,
really, do you want my Halloween costume? I'm getting distracted by a dog. I like this because I'm mysterious.
I do like the scarf. It adds very much mysterious.
And then you just gotta do this.
Oh, it's got a pretty cool pom-pom on the top if you wanted.
Yeah, if you wanted like that. Okay. So basically, we couldn't get the gauntlets because
we ran out of time. We're recording this like hours before Halloween, so very much last minute costume.
First off, I would like to say, I gotta tell some secrets. We have a bunch of plants, fish, a dog, and a cat. I won't tell anything. Oh yeah, first off, we made a mistake on the sound thingy, so it's a repeat.
Oh yeah, this is the second time we're recording because I forgot to turn the mic on.
Yeah, okay, you didn't say
So
anything.
we were inspired by the patterns that were done by Assassin's Costume. So I'll leave a link to his YouTube in the description down below. Now those patterns were geared towards a man's size. And so I altered the pattern to make sure that it would fit my son. And we also took out a little bit of the point in the hood a bit because John didn't really want the point as much. And originally our design was inspired by the assassin from Soul Knight, which is an 8-bit character game that you play on like your iPad or your tablet. So that's the coloring on it. And then we wanted a unique Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, one that wasn't exactly from the video game, so something that had a bit more creativity to it.
I don't know if the assassin, I'm not that in depth of the game. If the assassin looks like this, maybe. There's a lot of them.
I think it looks very like an assassin. Very much.
Yeah, no,
Especially with the scarf.
I think.
And so the tutorial's for the jacket, but what we did is we just had black pants, a black t-shirt, and then we had a couple of black belts, one to cinch in the waist and one going across John's chest here.
So like if, sorry for cutting you off. So like out in the games, like you might have like grenades on here like a knife.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. That's pretty assassin-like.
Yeah.
And then for the scarf, it was just a long piece of material that I cut. I didn't actually sew it at all, and then we tied it on really cool like. So, are you ready to get into this tutorial? Yeah, let's get to it.
Bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum.
So to start, I am doing the back piece. I have cut a slit down the middle, and this is the front and back bodice piece. Now traditionally you'd have the two pieces separate, but I kind of like how this pattern was drafted where it's all one piece. It saves me 2 seams, so it saves quite a bit of time there. So we're just attaching the bottom of the jacket to the top of the jacket, and I'm just matching the side seams here and getting that all pinned in place. I'm actually using a jersey knit for this one as opposed to a woven fabric, just for added comfort and the fact that it feels kind of like a hoodie when you wear it. So I'm just serging the edges here. You don't need to use a serger. You can use a zigzag stitch on your regular sewing machine, and I'm just top stitching here about 1/4 inch away from the seams just to give it a nice decorative trim on the back. So that's what that looks like.
Bum ba-dum ba-dum bum.
So I actually serged the inside edges of this. You actually don't need to do that. I decided to do it before I fully lined the jacket. So if you're going to line it, you can omit that step. Next here, I am just going to be joining the shoulder seams. So the front and the back on the left and right shoulder seams. And I'm just pinning that in place. And just note that you do have the collar piece that extends down, so you want to make sure that that's not caught in there. And then I'm going to stitch along this edge. But before I do that, because I am using a knit fabric that stretches, I'm taking a piece of grosgrain ribbon and I am attaching that to each of the shoulder pieces. This prevents the shoulders from stretching out because you won't have a good shape if you have that. So I'm just pinning that in place before I stitch this down, and you can use a straight stitch on this because you are not going to be stretching this. And now that we've got that stitched, you can see how it looks from the right side. It's starting to look a little bit more like a jacket, and this is where the collar lapels will be folded out. So right here I have my sleeves in place, and I actually changed the sleeves. The way that they were drafted was kind of upside down, so you can see how my template kind of drafts it so that the seam is along the bottom as opposed to the top. And so you just stitch down the long end of the sleeve, turn it right side out, and you have your sleeves. Do that for the right and the left. Next, you're going to fold over the cuffs of the sleeve and just do a top stitch on the inside to finish the sleeves. And I did use a stretch stitch on that just because the sleeves do stretch a bit with this fabric. This is the lining. Now I ran out of fabric, so I was using what I had in my stash. And so this was the only other knit fabric that was the same weight that I had. It's on the inside, so it's all right if there's a bit of a plaid on the inside. Gives it character. Next, we are going to assemble the hood. So I've laid out all of the pieces, and I find that this is the easiest way to do that and to just systematically do it piece by piece. And so flipping it up, and so when you've got a concave curve attaching to a convex curve, just make sure you use a decent amount of pins. They fit exactly perfect in there, so just use the pins and stitch along the seams there to attach both those pieces. Now I am pressing the pieces in between doing this. It really helps for everything to lay flat. Next, I have the center piece, which forms the point. We decided to use red, just like the assassin from Soul Knight. And now we can attach on the other side, right sides together, the next point, and this brings the hoods together. So stitch along there. And now you can see that it's starting to take shape. Fold it right sides together. And now we're going to stitch along the back seam, which would go along the back of your head and neck. I'm just putting some pins in place here to make sure that it's held securely. And we're going to stitch down there. And I folded that out. And I've kind of fiddled with it a little bit, and I have noticed that it is a bit pointy along the back side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a more gentle curve. So I'm just taking some out right there. I'm going to flip it back right sides together. Put a couple pins in to secure that. And I'll take it back to my machine and just soften that curve a little bit. There we go. That looks more like the shape that I am going for the hood. And so you're going to want to make two of these hoods, one for the main fabric, which is with the red stripe, and one for my lining fabric, which just has a gray stripe on the back. And then you're going to attach them both to both the lining bodice and the fashion fabric bodice. And so I'm only attaching the hood up until the collar points. So I always make sure that I fold it out to see where the collar points are. Next, we are going to do the shoulder pieces. So as I said, just place them out in the diagram that we have here and stitch them systematically, pressing as you go. And when you're doing the curves, make sure to use a decent amount of pins to make sure you get that right. And stitch along that curve and press. Next, we're going to take our scissors and we are going to clip up to the stitching line. Do not clip into the stitches. And because this fabric doesn't fray, you don't need to finish the edges, but I wanted to fold it over and finish the edges. So I'm just going to finish the outside edge of this along all of the points here and just fold that down, take it to the iron, press it, and I've held it with Wonder Clips. It's a lot easier on a narrow seam. And I did a couple of top stitching along the areas. I've placed it on my dress form. This is a lady's dress form. I don't have a man's dress form. I should really invest in one sometime soon. And I'm just pinning it to the top of the fashion fabric. So not the lining, but our exterior fabric. And so I'm pinning it all along the collar, and then we are going to stitch this in place with some basting stitches. So once that is basted in place, then you can attach the hood to the fashion fabric. So we're sandwiching those pieces in. And you can see that it lays quite nicely. Now what you could do at this stage if you wanted to was add some interfacing to the collar lapels. If you want a nice crisp point, this is just a Halloween costume, so I didn't go ahead and do that, but it would be something to consider if you're going to be using it multiple times. So now I have my lining fabric, and I'm going to put right sides together. I'm actually using the wrong side of my knit fabric to form the inside of the lining on the jersey lapels because I want a black contrast on those lapels when they're folded over. And so then you're going to stitch all the way around the outside of this, making sure to leave an opening about the size of maybe your hand spread out so that you can turn it right side out once it's all done. And so you can see I've got the opening right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull everything out after I have clipped the curves. So it's very important that you go in and clip the inside points, take out some of the excess bulk, and anywhere that you've got a curve or a sharp corner, you're going to want to clip those so that it creates some ease in the fabric so you don't get any puckering going on. So let's flip that right side out, and then once it's flipped right side out, give it a nice good press, making sure to roll the seams slightly to the lining fabric so that on the fashion fabric side you don't see any of the lining showing through. And so once that is pressed, you're going to go, and this is just me rolling them and getting it nice and pressed. I am using a piece of wood as a tailor's clapper. So the moisture from the steam in your iron actually goes into the wood and really presses those seams nicely. I find on knits, as well as when I'm doing suits, this is a tool that you really need. Next, pin the closure shut, but stitch around the entire perimeter of your jacket because you want all of the seams to lay nice and flat, and this will help it to stay nice and flat. And so what you're seeing here is I'm also basting the armholes shut because I decided not to line the sleeves. So if you were lining the sleeves, you would construct both pieces with the sleeves on and sandwich them together. I didn't think that we needed to have some lining in the sleeves, so I'm just basting around it, and then I'm attaching my sleeves onto the edge, and what I'll do is I'll serge the outside so that everything is nice and clean on the inside of our garment. So once that is done, we're going to flip the sleeves right side out, and you should have a fully lined garment here with the sleeves attached. So it's really starting to come together as the jacket. Now we've got some fun finishing details that we're going to do on the collar lapels. So I am just finger pressing these into place. I'll later take it to the iron and really get a nice crisp position on that. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw on where we're going to do some decorative zigzag satin stitches where the buttons are going to be. So the buttons are going to be at the end of these stitches. So I'm just drawing them in with some chalk. Drawing on jersey fabric because it does stretch is a bit of a bother with this chalk. So I am going to adjust my stitch length to 0.3 and the width to 5.5 because I want it to be a wider zigzag stitch. So then I'm going to position my fabric in and start to make these decorative stitches. So I'm going to do that on both of the lower lapels. The upper lapels, I didn't bother doing that because it is folded over on the hood, so you wouldn't really see it as much. So once I've got those in place, I'm just going to fold that down. And I've got my jar of buttons because this is a Halloween costume and I'm using up things that I have in my stash. I'm going to try to find some buttons that look well on this. If I was going to the store and getting buttons, I'd probably get some beautiful metal decorative buttons that really look fantastic with this, but alas, I'm doing a last minute Halloween costume and this is what I had in my stash. So then you're going to attach those on. Well, there you have it. A nice quick tutorial for your next cosplay. If you're heading out to a con and want to do an Assassin's Creed costume with a little bit of a different take on how I constructed it than the original tutorial. If you have any questions, don't forget to leave them in the comment section down below. John, any last words?
Do you want to see more of me?
I would love to see more of you, but
Yeah,
I'm your
I'm
mom.
a star. I'm gonna run away now.
Don't do that. I won't pinch your cheek again. I love you.
Good. Also, I like Destiny. I wish I could get a channel, but I don't know how. But please help me.
Well, I would be delighted to help you out with your channel. I just need to figure out how to record on the PlayStation so that you can play your games and do that.
I'm pretty sure
I'll do
it's
some
like
research.
in the settings area. Or
Oh. So until next time, makers, let's get our Sew-Spiration on.
Guys, my mom wants this picture perfect and it's been done 50 billion times over, and she's totally not over here laughing a little bit of her recording this, and it's very, 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 oh, I went off track, very, very secret, like very, let me see her, and my cat, Dash, who's a thick boy. Get back here. Okay, so that's that. Please say you want to see more of me in the comments because Dash, what are you doing? Because I'm the best here. I mean, like, I don't know what you mean. I'm the best. Okay, let's finish this.